It's Tuesday, October 2nd, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On today's show, we get our coffee fix with Chief Sonnabend on National Coffee with a Cop Day and explore new economic development workforce opportunities in the wind energy industry. Now, for a look at municipal and legislative notes. Have you ever found an injured or sick bird or mammal and not sure what to do or who to call? The Division of Fisheries and Wildlife has launched a new tool to help find a wildlife rehabilitator near you. Get advice on the best procedures for safely collecting an animal and get directions to their facility. Check it out at www.mass.gov. You'll find the new mapping feature under Division of Fisheries and Wildlife. Coffee. The lifeblood of many of us and a stimulant to sit down and have a conversation. Today is National Coffee with a Cop, and Chief Sonnabend has the details to where you can grab a cup of joe and meet Barnstable's finest. It's the beginning of the week and I need coffee. Chief, do you need coffee?
I already had some.
You already had some.
You're a late riser.
I am not. We communicate at 5 a.m.
Already. You should have gotten it already.
So, Coffee with a Cop coming up today.
Yes, it is. Today. 8 to 9, Cumberland Farms, West Main Street.
Right.
8 to 10, Dunkin' Donuts, Katuitt at the Windmill Plaza. So right there used to be the bank.
Yep.
And right there in that building right there.
Oh, that's
so
a nice
two
one.
Locations.
Two locations,
Two
my goodness.
locations, two. Count them two.
So 8 to 9.
8 to 9, Cumberland Farms, West Main Street.
Yep.
8 to 10, Katuitt, Dunkin' Donuts.
Okay. So this whole Coffee with a Cop thing, how did that start?
You know, you mean nationally?
Nationally, isn't it?
I don't know. I don't know if it was Dunkin' Donuts that started it, but it's been going on for a few years. Someone just, declared it National Coffee with a Cop Day. Actually, the first was Coffee Day, National Coffee Day.
Oh, yeah.
So we follow up on the second, I guess.
Okay.
And but it came out of some initiative somewhere. I'm sure there was some police department somewhere got together with Dunkin' Donuts or some other company and said, hey, we have an idea to meet and greet people, and just kind of blossomed from there. I know that different departments around here, us included, have done it, throughout the years here and there. But there actually is a National Coffee with a Cop Day, and it is October 2nd. So there we go.
There you go. So what does the police department gain from these types of
Coffee
and donuts?
Yeah, coffee. Well, no, I did not say Coffee and Donut Day with a Cop. Just Coffee Day with a Cop. You gain interaction with people. You get out there and talk to people, and it's nice on both ends to just to talk to people, have a good time, and sometimes it's a little bit of laughing at yourself, and getting out there doing a little community engagement, and just rubbing elbows with the people.
So last year, I think you were making coffee, if I remember correctly.
Yep, we did. Well, we did it. Like as you do. Throughout the year, we've gone to various locations, but specifically last year for Coffee with a Cop, we were out at the Katuitt location last year as well. We had guys working the drive-through. We had people working the counter and talking to people. And
that's a tough job.
Yeah, it is. So when you're going out and getting your coffee, and it takes a little bit. Cut them some slack, because seriously, it is, someone coming in, I want a double, triple foam, no sugar, soy latte, milk, ice, with 2 drops of cinnamon in it. And you're back there and you got like 12 people standing in line looking at you funny, and all they want is a plain black coffee, and you're trying to make all this stuff. It's not easy. If you think it is, get behind that counter, and I think we take some of the service industry for granted, quite honestly. There is some work to it, and it's not easy, and customers can be a peach sometimes.
Right. And just a curiosity's sake, do cops really drink a lot of coffee?
I don't know. I really didn't start drinking coffee till I got on the job, to be honest with you.
Really?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. So I think we do. I think we do. But it's a lot of it, energy drinks now, I think.
Oh, the Red Bulls and things like that.
The Monsters and things like that. Yeah. Not as much coffee. Kind of the older generations, I think, of the coffee.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's those long shifts, I'm sure.
Long shifts, long hours, but and it really is. You get a coffee, and it's a chance to. What do most people do when they're having coffee? They're having a conversation with somebody, or they're talking to coworkers or whatever. It's kind of like the water cooler. You kind of go in, you get your coffee, and chit chat with a little bit with the people that work there, and with your coworkers or whatever, and we're just including the community. That's all.
Fantastic. So we have it 8 to 9
8
at
to 9, Cumbies.
West Main, and Dunkin' Donuts
8 to
in
10,
Katuitt.
Windmill Plaza.
Is it really Marston's Mills, though?
We won't get into an argument over that.
No, we're just going to have coffee and conversation. Excellent. Thanks, Chief.
Yeah.
Vineyard Wind is partnering with regional colleges to help train a new offshore wind workforce on the Cape and Islands. We sat down with Jen Cullen, Vineyard Wind's permitting and outreach specialist, for a deep dive on innovation in the workforce and career opportunities in the wind energy field. Beautiful day here in Barnstable. Who are you and what do you do?
My name is Jen Cullen. I am an outreach and permitting specialist for Vineyard Wind. I do a lot of the outreach here in Barnstable, talking to residents and the community about the project that we're going to be building, the components on shore that'll be happening here in Centerville and up into Hyannis. I also do a lot of our workforce development, so understanding what the work is going to entail once construction begins, and then working with educational and workforce institutions here in Massachusetts to ensure that the training programs that we'll need are up and running to make sure that Massachusetts residents have the opportunity to work on this project and future projects in offshore wind.
And future projects. So this isn't just the only project, there'll be more. So tell me a little bit about how you got involved in Vineyard Wind. You're a Barnstable native?
I grew up here in Centerville, went to Centerville Elementary, Barnstable High School. I had an interest in environmental issues for a very long time, and in college up at the University of Vermont, I started studying environmental issues. At the time, Cape Wind was a very big issue here in Barnstable and on the Cape, and I got involved working for an advocacy organization locally then in offshore wind, and that was 2007. I've worked on a whole host of clean energy and clean water initiatives around the country and also here in Barnstable since, and now I'm working for Vineyard Wind.
Right. So this project is the largest offshore wind that the United States has seen to date. There's been some test sites out there. It seems like a daunting task to get materials and people out to that site to build the farm. Tell us a little bit about that process. How does that work?
I think it feels daunting because it's the first offshore wind farm in the United States, but we have over 1,000 turbines in the world that are built offshore. Europe has been in this industry for over 20 years now, and actually some of the first offshore wind farms that were constructed in the 90s have come to the end of their useful life, and they're being decommissioned to put in bigger, better, more efficient turbines. So while this feels new to us here, it's actually not a new industry at all. In terms of the construction, it is a big project. It's a huge infrastructure project that will be happening right off the coast of Massachusetts. 84 turbines. They are 9.5 megawatt machines, and at the time that we contracted them, they were the largest commercially available turbines in the world. And so each of these machines are going to be out there spinning, producing clean electricity that will be coming to shore right here on Cape Cod and feeding the grid in Massachusetts to all of the ratepayers. In terms of construction, it is going to be a huge operation. The construction will be based out of New Bedford, and we're going to see hundreds of construction jobs when that project gets going, just for these 84 turbines, and we anticipate there will be, up to 20 large offshore large-scale wind farms up and down the East Coast.
Wow. So moving people and materials out there, do people live out there during the project, or is that something that you'll kind of, we say bus, but you'll boat them out there for every day?
They will actually live out there, so there will be what's called accommodation vessels that will be located in the turbine area, so that during construction, crews will live out there for anywhere between 2 and 6 weeks at a time, depending on which aspect of the project they're going to be working on. And so these accommodation vessels are kind of like floating hotels for the crews out there. This is how they do it in Europe, and our project being 35 miles from here on Cape and many miles offshore from New Bedford, it's the most efficient way to get the project built in the quickest amount of time.
Wow. And I guess the question I would have is somebody who goes out there for a position out there, Should they be seaworthy?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that's something, so Vineyard Wind's committed to utilizing union labor on this project wherever possible, and that includes these offshore positions that Americans have not yet done yet. And so we're working with the Massachusetts Building Trades Council on determining exactly which roles will be required for the offshore construction, and then we're working on helping them with internal recruitment amongst the current tradespeople to determine who is interested in these jobs and the lifestyle that they'll require living offshore, and then who has the technical certifications to be able to do this work. And then they'll all have to get additional offshore wind specific safety trainings to go offshore and help construct the turbines, the cables, the offshore substation, and all those other components.
Wow, that's very, very interesting. So let's start. It's underwater. How do these things get built? Like, what jobs would build these turbines? Is it concrete jobs? It's fascinating.
Yeah, so the first aspect is the foundation installation, and those are called monopoles. So it's one large hollow steel tube that will be driven into the seafloor, and that will anchor the turbine. Then there is a transition piece that's placed on top of the foundation, and that serves to transition from the pretty basic foundation up into the more complicated infrastructure of the turbines themselves. Then the turbines get installed. The towers go in two sections. There's the nacelle that sits on top with all the gear components, and then the 3 individual blades. There is cable infrastructure that connects all of the turbines to one another, and then to the offshore substation, and then the cables that bring the power to shore. And so each of those will have a variety of different work that's involved. And so that, and understanding exactly what the work entails from our contractors and then conveying that information to the Trades Council is what we're currently working on. To make sure that we've got the right people available and ready to go and trained up and safety certified when it comes time for construction.
So it's a tight labor market. As you start this, talking to the Trades Council, there's these connotations that there's no workforce here in southeastern Massachusetts. They're either, especially here on the Cape, that there's an older demographic, so all our young people are gone. But what are you finding out there as you're starting to talk to people about these positions?
We're finding there's a lot of interest in the industry. It's really exciting work. It's a brand new industry here in Massachusetts, and this is the first project in the United States. So there's a lot of interest in this project from people that have the skills. That said, not all of them are interested in living offshore for several weeks at a time, and it is a really rough environment. I mean, we're talking the windiest area, one of the windiest areas in the world, which is why we're constructing it there. And so that means rough seas, it means going offshore for a few weeks at a time. And so we're also talking with the trades to do recruitment relatively early in the process. So we're negotiating a project labor agreement with the trades now. We don't anticipate offshore construction to start for a couple of years at this point, or at least 18 months. And so we want to ensure that we have enough time to recruit internally anyone that is qualified and interested in this work, and then also give an opportunity for those that maybe need some more time to get trained up to do this work to have the time to do so.
What are some of those skill sets that, you talk about a construction trade, but this I would think is a little bit more on that higher level construction. It's not maybe laying asphalt or, a backhoe type of thing. It's a little bit maybe more involved. Are there a specific skill set that you'd be looking for?
Yeah, I mean, the construction, it's across the board, because we will have some site setup work that needs to be done in New Bedford, and that's kind of traditional work that the trades are used to and know how to do. They do it all the time. Here in Centerville and in Hyannis, we'll be laying cable in the roads, underneath the roads, and we'll be building a substation in Hyannis. And again, that's work that, Massachusetts tradespeople do all the time. But the offshore component is unique, and because of the challenging offshore environment and the safety component and ensuring the highest quality safety standards are applied to offshore wind, that means sending as few people as possible to the turbines, which will mean that anyone that's going out there will need to have a variety of skills that don't cut across traditional trade lines. So that's part of the conversation that we're having with the Trades Council, is how we're going to meet the needs of the project in ensuring that we get the right people offshore installing the turbines that have that variety of skills that can do what needs to get done when it comes to hooking up the electrical infrastructure, doing any mechanical work, just kind of the basic nuts and bolts of cleaning the turbines and fixing anything that needs to be fixed, changing light bulbs, really like a jack of all trades type out there.
What entities would you be collaborating, or you've mentioned a couple already that you are collaborating with the Trade Council and some folks here, but colleges specifically, we've known that you have already reached out to Cape Cod Community College to kind of like wet their whistle of what's coming. How will you work with those entities, and who are they?
Yeah, we're really excited about the workforce development pipeline in southeastern Massachusetts, and especially here on the Cape. We're working with Cape Cod Community College, and through the Mass Clean Energy Center, Vineyard Wind and Mass CEC recently gave a set of grants to educational institutions and workforce development institutions in the state to train people up for offshore wind. And so we're working with 4Cs on developing materials and a course to introduce students to offshore wind 101. So they've already held a couple of sessions for an introductory course over the summer, and they're going to be doing it again in the coming months. So that's exciting. It'll kind of introduce people to the industry and the various career paths that will be available to Cape residents. We're also working with Mass Maritime Academy on setting up the specific offshore wind safety trainings that will be required. And so there's a specific kind of training called the Global Wind Organization Basic Safety Training. And it requires a whole host of trainings that are very specific to the offshore wind industry. And in Europe, it's the gold standard for safety trainings. And that is what we want to adopt here in the US. So Mass Maritime, through that same grant system, was awarded the funds to set up that safety training system, as was Bristol Community College. They'll be able to offer that down in the New Bedford South Coast region. And so we've got a whole, a whole host of partners that we're working with in terms of the educational component, the VOTEC schools on the Cape and in the South Coast area, the trades, so the councils and some of the individual unions have really come forward in pursuing these trainings, and the community colleges around here.
Describe some of the job responsibilities and compensation. Now, there's two pieces to this question. One would be your initial building of the turbines, obviously, and then there's got to be a management component of these turbines after they're built and now up and running. I know you can't speak directly to exactly how much that they would make, but what's a salary range that folks could look at? I mean, it's a service industry here now, so we tend to be on the lower scale for some of our service industry, but construction trades tend to be a well-paying job.
Yeah, so there's several phases of these projects. So, we tend to think of them as the planning and development phase, which is where we are now, and those are the jobs like what I have in terms of outreach, planning the project, permitting the project, managing all of those aspects. There's the construction phase, which will be actually building the project, and then there will be the long-term operations and maintenance of the project. So, during construction, because this is a union job, those will be well-paying union jobs for the construction. In terms of operations and maintenance, those are the long-term jobs. Those are something that we're really excited about being able to bring to southeastern Massachusetts. Our operations and maintenance facility for this first project will be based in Vineyard Haven. And so that will be anywhere between probably 40 and 60 really well-paying long-term jobs for the life of the project. So those are anticipated to be there for 25 years. And those are the technicians that will get up every day and go offshore and maintain the turbines, fix anything that needs fixing, do kind of routine upgrades. And those jobs are anticipated to be anywhere in the range from $80,000 to $100,000 a year, which is a really significant impact on a small community and a small island like Martha's Vineyard, to be able to bring that many jobs that are year-round, stable, and long-term to that community.
with a salary that can afford a house in Vineyard Haven.
Right, right.
Excellent. There's other, and we've touched upon this, there's other projects really that will be based upon this initial one. You're looking at citing other areas that we've seen in the news recently. Will this workforce then maybe have a niche in the community of construction? You know, being the first, they'll be trained up. Will you come back to these seasoned workers that worked on this first project to go to the next project?
That would be the idea.
Right.
The more experience residents here in Massachusetts can gain on these projects, the more qualified they're going to be to keep working on future projects. Like I had spoken about, you know, it's a really technical skill set to do the offshore work especially. There's a lot of extra training that will go into being qualified to do that work. And so the more that an individual does that work and the more that they can keep up those safety certifications and other certifications, it will just become easier to keep using them on the next projects. Vineyard Wind 1 being based out of New Bedford and here in southeastern Massachusetts, we're really attracting a lot of the supply chain companies into Massachusetts because we're the first in the industry here in the US as well. And so that cascading effect of attracting supply chain companies who are then going to be recruiting workers is another thing that we're really excited about to be able to do here in Massachusetts.
Right, what are some of those supply chains? Would that be like concrete or cabling? What are those?
I mean, it starts with the tier 1 suppliers, as we call them. So the turbine suppliers, foundation installation companies, the cable suppliers. And we've heard from several of our major suppliers just for this project that are interested in setting up shop here in the US. We don't currently have most of those companies because we don't have this industry here yet.
Right.
Each of those companies requires services too. So when we talk about the supply chain, we talk anywhere from tier 1, those major companies, down to tier 4, tier 5, who are supplying things like safety equipment or fuel or food for these accommodation vessels. And that will all really have a pretty significant economic impact in the South Coast community and here on the Cape.
Right, and those accommodation vessels all need employees too.
Yeah, they need stuff, they need services, they need waste disposal, they need, and here on the Cape and in the South Coast, we have a lot of the services in that tier 3, tier 4 category because we have this maritime history. We know how to service and work on boats. We know how to service an offshore kind of commercial industry. And so we have those services available. It's just a matter of linking them into this new industry and making sure that they're aware of the opportunities that are coming with offshore wind.
Let's talk numbers. How many people are we talking about here?
Working on this project, we're anticipating construction jobs in the hundreds. Split between here on the Cape, where we're going to be doing a lot of that onshore work, bringing the cable to shore and hooking it into the grid, and then out of New Bedford, where most of the construction jobs will be based from. But there's going to be a lot of activity happening at the Port of New Bedford. Like I said, there's the site set up before the turbine components even arrive. There are going to be the jobs of offloading all of the turbine components and setting them up at the site of New Bedford. Most of the work that actually goes into installing an offshore turbine is done onshore. And so, yeah, they say about 90% of the turbine installation gets done onshore. So that will be done at the Port of New Bedford. And then there will be loading the components back onto the vessels to go off for the installation. So we're really anticipating, you know, hundreds of construction jobs during that construction period, which will be about 1.5 to 2 years in total. And then those long-term jobs for operations and maintenance that'll be based out in Vineyard Haven.
Right, and then additionally those ancillary jobs, I'm thinking, I've been to the New Bedford port. You're talking now a whole lot of people unloading and loading those boats as well. That's another whole supply chain on the service industry of this.
Yeah,
too.
all those people will need to eat. All of those people will need to stay in hotels around there, you know, depending on where they're coming from and for how long. And those supply chain companies are really looking hard at Massachusetts and southeastern Massachusetts and how they can set up shop here, what they will need in terms of facilities, what kinds of people they'll need to start recruiting. And so we're really starting to see the snowball effect because of this first project being out of Massachusetts.
This has been a fascinating conversation and really exciting for the town of Barnstable, obviously, as your host coming in with the cable, but also for economic development here on the Cape. Is there anything that I might not have asked that you'd want to have people be aware of?
I mean, I think I just really want to highlight the opportunities here on the Cape and the South Coast for young people. I'm a Barnstable native. I grew up here, went to Barnstable High School, and I moved off Cape. I moved off to get an education, and it did not even occur to me to move back to the Cape. And I know that that's the case for a lot of young people around here. It's a challenging job market for a young professional, and I see a ton of opportunity, not just in the direct jobs constructing and developing offshore wind, but in all of those ancillary opportunities. We're already working with a few companies that are Cape-based on doing things like passive acoustic monitoring. So that will be going out to when we're doing construction and helping to track where the marine mammals are so that we know if there are any sensitive species in the area during construction so that we can avoid anything that might irritate them. And so there's a lot that's here on the Cape already that can be built up for offshore wind, and those are all going to provide opportunities for young people to stay here, move here, set up their families here, and the Cape really needs that. We need that next generation. We need a stable year-round economy here, and I think we have that opportunity in offshore wind, and I think that's why a lot of our workforce development partners and educational partners here in the south coast of Massachusetts and the Cape and Islands are really excited about this industry.
Thanks again, Jen. This has been really, really a great interview.
Thank you.
Up next, things to do, places to go, and people to meet. Photojournalist and ex-wife of singer Don McLean will be the keynote speaker at Independence House's 19th Annual Domestic Violence Awareness Month Community Breakfast on Friday, October 4th. Patricia McLean is the founder of the multimedia exhibit, Finding Our Voices, Breaking the Silence of Domestic Abuse. Details for registration at independencehouse.org. I'm Paula Hersey, and thank you for watching Barnstable Today.